Did I just hear a fan go on really loud?
I'll mute myself.
We're live! I can see it. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? You can hear me? I saw a yes. Yay! Okay, awesome. Sorry for the delay there. Did you know that running stream on Twitch takes a lot of computer power and may or may not have bricked one of my coworkers' computers? Yay, fun times. Anyway, super glad to have you all here. I'm going to be working over in this fun window that you see, but I can also see your chat. So if you have questions or comments or something you want me to explain a little bit differently, feel free to throw it in the chat, and I will do my best to get those answered. I've not streamed before, so this is going to be a fun and interesting experience. So I just wanted to start with a little bit of a quick, practically like I'm doing a conference talk, right? Super fun. Just a quick run through of what we're going to do today, and then we'll get to the coding, and that'll be a lot more fun. So today we're talking about how to build your first Gatsby blog. This is what we're calling a webinar tutorial, and the learning team is going to be putting these on about once a month, hopefully. I'm Lori Barth. I am a member of the Gatsby learning team. And a bit about the learning team is we are a team here at Gatsby that is focused on improving the learning experience for users of all skill levels. So we're hoping that whether you're new to coding or coming from a different framework or don't know JavaScript super well, we're hoping that this will be something that is helpful for all of you. Now, upcoming webinars that we have, next we're going to have using MDX. That'll be next month. And then we're going to be working with an e-commerce Gatsby site. And then we're going to focus exclusively on Gatsby image. So some really fun stuff coming up there. And a lot of you were probably brought here from the hashtag 100 Days of Gatsby challenges, which have been super fun. We've loved seeing what everyone is building. And one of our very first prompts was a blog site. So excited to kind of pair that with today's stream and talk through some of the things you may have come across or not come across. So there is a GitHub repo for the site that we're building today. There's a README that explains it's broken up into different branches for each of the steps we're going to go through today. And all of these links that I have up here are included in the README for that repository. Hopefully someone can throw that in the Twitch chat really quick. And that's the place you want to go for kind of everything we're working on today. So don't feel like you need to be coding along or taking notes even. You can get all of this after the fact. It'll be in that repository for you. So like I said, I'm Lori. You can follow me at Lori on Tech, but the learning team is also at Gatsby.js. So if you have Gatsby related questions, we have the Gatsby.js account, but we also have this one specifically for questions and troubleshooting and help. So without further ado, let's get started, shall we? So today we're going to work off of what we call a starter. So Gatsby has a number of starters for different types of sites that you might want to build, and they're self-contained, and so they work out of the box. And they have great READMEs like this that tell us exactly what we need to do. So in this case, we want to take this command, Gatsby new. My blog starter is the name that we're assigning to it, so we can call it whatever we want. And the GitHub that we are attaching to. So we would run this command, but super cheating thing, I didn't want you all to have to watch my computer run npm. So we already have it. We've already downloaded it. It's all here. And I also cheated and brought it up in our IDE. Now, in order to download the Gatsby Starter, there's a couple of prerequisites you need to know about. You need to have Node installed on your computer. If you have a Mac, that's brew install Node. If you have Linux or Windows, we have specific documentation for walking through installation for Node. And the other thing you have to have installed is Gatsby. So installing Gatsby looks like this. And again, I have it installed on my computer, so I'm not going to run that today, but just so you know what you need before you can create your new blog starter. But luckily, my machine is all set up. We're ready to go. So let's dive in. I already have my project, and I'd like us to see what it looks like out of the box. So it's going to take a second, but it's still pretty fast, which is fun, even when I'm, streaming and doing all kinds of fun things. And this is our site. This is what we get out of the box, which is, nice. We've got some blog posts here. We've got dates and titles and a bio, and it's a starting point. So the first thing I want to do is I've decided that, these are fine blog posts and we'll keep them here for now, but I want to make my own blog post. So up here in our directories, we'll see a directory called content, and inside of it is another directory called blog. And if you notice, there are different directories inside here that are the same as the titles of our blog posts, more or less. So hello world, my second post, new beginnings. So let's open one of them just to see what's in there. This is a markdown file, index.md, and it's got some text and some metadata information. It's got an image in here. So let's follow this same structure. I've decided that we're going to make a coding blog today. So my first coding project. And inside it, we're going to make an index file, just like the one we saw here. And we're going to steal this section. This section is called front matter, and it allows us to have some kind of descriptive information that gets picked up later. So my first coding project, let's learn Gatsby, and date timestamps aren't fun, but for now, let's at least make it 2020. We're going to be in the future today, May 1st, 2020. So as soon as we refresh that, we can see that I have my first coding project, but there's nothing in here. So if you've written in Markdown before, you may know some of these tricks, but some of you may not. Markdown is itself a language, and there's all kinds of different syntax you can use to express different types of things that you would want to appear on your blog post. So let's say we're building a Gatsby site. And let's say we want to link to Gatsby's docs, which are near and dear to my heart. We can do that with some brackets and some parentheses. We save that, and all of a sudden, we have a link. So it appears like this in our Markdown, but looks nice here on our blog post. We can do other things like make a list. This is the syntax for bullet points. Or we can add a header. Now, what I want to point out about this header is that I'm using 2 £, hashtag signs, whatever you want to call this symbol. I'm using 2 of them because by default, the title in my front matter appears as an H1. So following an H1, anything underneath that should be an H2 for accessibility, for navigation. So we're going to make this 2 £, hashtags. And then if you wanted to do a subheader, we do 3 and so on and so forth. And so you just keep adding to them. And as you can tell, the styling gets just a little bit different, which is nice. So this is a coding project blog, but so far I don't see any code, and that's not fun. Well, If you're familiar with Markdown, you may be familiar with the syntax for adding code snippets. Gatsby is built using Markdown and JavaScript. So today, let's do an example in JavaScript. Let name equal Lori, because that's me. And all of a sudden, this looks really nice. Well, how did that happen? One of the nice things about using the blog starter is that there are a lot of packages or plugins rather that are already included for you. So the one that we just used is Gatsby Remark Prism.js, and that does styling and syntax highlighting for your code snippets, and it lets you make use of all those nice keywords. Now, I gotta say, I'm a dark mode person, as you can tell from my fancy screen here, and I don't really like this styling, so I wanna change it. Lucky for me, Prism comes built in with a bunch of different syntax highlighting designs. And all of those are used in the Gatsby browser.js file. This is where we're importing the Prism CSS that we're using. So I cheated, and ahead of time, I looked at the one that I wanted, and the one I want is called Okadia. So I'm just gonna update that and press save. And all of a sudden, we're in dark mode, which is awesome. And in my opinion, quite pretty. So you may notice that our Hello World example has an image. I want my page to have an image too. Syntax for images is very similar to links, actually, which can get a little bit confusing, except there's an exclamation point in front of them. So our path to our image is going to go inside the parentheses, and our alt text is going to go inside our braces. We ask that everyone use nice descriptive alt text, so we'll do that in just a second. I already downloaded a image for us that I want us to use. It's a nice glowy computer. Isn't that pretty? Right? So we want to put in, to start, the path to our computer, and it's a relative path. We want all of these images to be co-located in our blog directory. It allows optimizing of images that's done by Gatsby just out of the box for us, and when we include them in our Markdown. And make sure to pay attention to what your file extension is. If it's PNG and you put .jpeg, it will not work. I know this because I've made this mistake before. And now we have a nice computer. So let's add our alt text. So we're gonna say a MacBook partially open with visible lights glowing. Not the best alt text in the world. I could work on that a little bit, but it's nice to have something that's kind of descriptive and goes a step further. So this is a funny looking blog post, but we've got text, we've got a link, we've got some bullet points, headers, we've added code, we've added images. I feel pretty confident that I could make some good blog posts with all of this information. But I gotta tell you, this white background, really not my style. Not loving this. So we can make it fun. Let's add some CSS. We're gonna go away from all of this content and actually dive into our source folder. So our source folder is where most of our Gatsby JavaScript lives. And I wanna add CSS. So I'm actually going to make a new folder under source called styles. And I'm going to make a global.css file. In this case, I want it to apply absolutely everywhere, so we'll go with that for now. I want to control everything. I really don't like this white background. White makes my head hurt if I look at it for a while. So let's give it a new background color. I was playing around with this, and I like this light sea green color. It's pretty. Now, if you notice, this doesn't actually appear. Why is that? Well, it's because we're not using it. I have this global CS file, but it's not imported anywhere. In order for it to show up, I'm going to want to import my source /styles/global.css. And we have nice green background, but yikes, that blue, you really can't see that. So let's fix it. What can we try? Maybe dark blue? Okay, that's a little better, but again, I cheated ahead of time and I checked out our accessibility of these colors, and it passes at the AA level, which is pretty good, but I'd like to get AAA. So I'm just gonna scroll this to the left and see when it passes. Okay. So let's replace dark blue with just a slightly darker color. Okay, there we go. Now we should pass our nice accessibility color contrast checks. So if we go back to our landing page, honestly, it's looking better. But I'm noticing that no matter where I go, Kyle Matthews, our CEO, seems to follow me. And he's not me. So I'd like to change this information. And it appears on absolutely every page. So inside your source folder, you have a folder for templates, and there's a blog post template. This is being used inside Gatsby Node.js. There's a create pages hook that's taking our template and creating all of our blog posts. We'll dive into this a little bit more later, but let's just go to the template for now. If I scroll down, I'll see that in the footer is a bio. And that's a component, and it's being shared everywhere and included in the footer. So I could get rid of it entirely, and it would no longer appear in these pages, but I don't know. I think I deserve a bio too. So I'm going to go into components and look at this bio. What do I want to change? Well, let's scroll down. Written by author who lives and works in San Francisco building useful things. Social.twitter, where is all this coming from? Well, inside this component, there's a use static query hook that's running a GraphQL query. And if we look inside of it, we'll see that author, social, Twitter are coming from site metadata. The site metadata is in our Gatsby config file all the way at the top. So this is where we want to change that information. So we're going to call this a coding blog, and we're going to make this kind of anonymous. I have a coworker of mine who created this character called Gatsby because we all typo things all the time. So Gatsby coder. Let's have a new description and say a blog for learning code. And instead of Kyle Matthews Twitter, let's make it Ask Gatsby JS. That seems better. Better, but not great. Still Kyle's picture says he works in San Francisco. I don't work in San Francisco, and I'm not a him. So what else do we have to change here? Let's go back into this bio and take a look. Looks like there's text here. I'm going to close this so that's a little bit easier to read. Looks like there's text here. So let's get rid of the San Francisco. I work in Gatsby land. And instead of him, we're going to say them because we don't know who Gatsby coder is. And now we want to change this image. So this image is being used right here. It's coming from data.avatar.childImageSharp.fixed. Again, that's coming from our query. And it's an image query, and it's using a relative path to figure out what image it should grab. Well, it looks like it's all the way up here. It's profile pic. Yep, that's Kyle. Let's be the Gatsby image instead. That seems like it would be fun. So what we want to do here is we're just going to change what we're querying. It's going to be the Gatsby icon, and it's a PNG, so we got to make sure that file is correct. And on refresh, we've got a bio, and it appears everywhere. Sweet. All right, this is getting better. This is looking more like what I would want to try. So we've changed some colors. We've made a new blog. We've changed this bio that appears everywhere. But what about this landing page? Looks like it's showing stuff in chronological order. And that's probably how we want to do it. But I don't know about you. It's not aesthetically pleasing. I want it to be in alphabetical order. So how can I do that? Well, the only pages in the Gatsby Starter blog are a 404 page and an index page. So let's check out the index page. This looks like what we might be seeing. We're showing all of these blog posts. If we look down at the query where we're querying for these blog posts, we're sorting. We're sorting on front matter, date, order, descending. Well, if we remember when we made our original blog and we copied that front matter, we have a title, we have a date, and we have description. So instead of date, let's use title. So we'll just replace that. And descending order of alphabetical doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going to go with ascending order. There we go. Okay, so now we know how to change stuff that shows up on this landing page. So I can click on all these things, and it seems like they're getting these generated paths based on the title or the file. Oh, yeah, okay, it looks like the directory matches our URL. I want something different. So this is all controlled inside Gatsby Node, which I alluded to earlier. Let's close this a little bit so we can see it better. So we're using the create pages hook. We're pulling in that blog post template, and we're querying all the information that we need. We're querying a field called slug. And then when we create our page, we're using that to define the path. I want a different path, or at least something slightly different. I don't just want to hard code this because then they'll all have the same path, and that wouldn't work out super well. So for the moment, let's just show that we can do this. And we're going to add test to our path. Still works, but it's supposed to be test. What's happening? Well, this all gets generated when we build our site instead of when we run our site. So let's try rerunning this and seeing if it generates new paths. Oh my goodness, there's so many people in the chat. Hi, everybody. Okay, so we'll refresh and we'll click and see we get nothing. There's nothing here. That's because there's no longer anything at the hello world path. And our index page is still linking with that information instead of our new path, which adds test at the end. So we want to go back to our index. We're querying the slug and passing it directly. So let's fix that. We have this link, and that's how we're linking to our new page. We use the title, but the actual to is node.fields.slug. But we added test to that. So let's add test to it, just to show that we can. And now all of a sudden, we get our blog back. Awesome. So we've changed the URLs, we've moved things around on the landing page, but we're still only working with stuff that came from the original starter. I think we can do some more. One of the nice things about the starter that I said is it comes with a whole lot of stuff. Well, one of the things it comes with is Gatsby plugin for Google Analytics. Now, if you have a blog and you're writing stuff for free, it can be really nice to see that other people are reading it or see what you're writing that's particularly popular or showing up in search engines so you can write more on it because people are hungry for that. Well, it's already installed, but you do have to add something manually. Once your site is live and you have a domain with a Google Analytics tracking ID, which you can grab from their dashboard, you're going to want to uncomment this and add your tracking ID in. We're not going to do this because I'm not going to show you a bunch of secret keys, but I wanted to point it out because I think it's one of those things that's nice and built in. You just have to know where to add the information. But that's not a plugin we're adding, so let's add a plugin. I came across this super fun plugin the other day. It's called Gatsby Remark Reading Time. And there's a whole lot of information in the README, but it adds estimated reading time. So you know if, without scrolling, if this is a really long post or a short post. Well, let's install it and see what happens. So npm install, it's called Gatsby Remark Reading Time. I'm not going to run this because, again, I cheated ahead of time and I downloaded it already. But what I didn't do was include it in the Gatsby config. So if you go to the package.json, you'll see that I have Gatsby Remark Reading Time included. It was downloaded, but I can't use it yet because I need to include it in our config file. It is a remark plugin. So Gatsby Transformer Remark is dealing with all of the markdown that we have. And because this is a markdown plugin, I'm going to include it down here inside the plugins that relate to Remark. All right, so that's included. Let's run our site again. Queries. Oh yeah, GraphQL queries are rough. So we're actually about to look at a little bit of a cheat for that. So when you start your page, you see that you start your site rather, you see that we're using localhost 8000 to look at our site. But there's another thing here. Localhost 8000 GraphQL. Sorry about that. So let's copy this and see what it is. So this is a playground for playing with GraphQL queries. I want to know if this reading time thing that I'm working with is actually going to work before I try and wire it up in all these other ways. So let's test it out. If I go into Gatsby node, I'm going to steal the current query that's pulling all of my blog post information. So let's run that. Now we're seeing what's showing up. We have a slug, we have a title, and that's all there is. Well, I looked up ahead of time what we want to do to use the reading time plugin, and we actually want to add it in here. But if you notice, as soon as I start typing, the GraphQL Playground gives me some hints about what's available. So if you're struggling with your GraphQL queries, you can do a lot just by clicking around on things in the UI to see what you want to see. So reading time, and then what can I get inside here? It looks like text. Let's run that. Ooh, 1 minute, 5 minute read. This is perfect. This is exactly what I want. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to replace the query that I currently have in Gatsby node. But right now, it's just coming back in my query. I'm not actually using it or passing it anywhere. When we create the page, we can see that we're getting some information. We're getting a path passed, we're getting a component, And then we're getting context. And inside context, we're passing kind of whatever extra information we need. In this case, a slug, previous, and next. I also want to pass reading time here. So I'm going to make the key reading time and then post.node.fields.readingtime.text. Now, it looks a little bit confusing as to why I added all of these things. It's matching and walking through the return object that we have. So inside of edges, we have all of these objects, and these objects are posts. So it's post, and inside of that, we have node, and inside of that, we have fields, and inside of that, I get reading time and then text. So that's how we're traversing our GraphQL query. So I'm passing this in. Now I get to use it. We're going to go back to that blog post template. We're already grabbing previous and next, so let's also grab reading time. This is using destructuring assignment, which is a JavaScript concept. Feel free to look it up, but basically it says that page context is an object with a bunch of stuff inside of it. I want to grab the value for the key previous, the value for the key next, and in this case, the value for the key reading time. And now I'm going to go down here. We're already adding the front matter date. So let's add reading time right next to that. And we're going to want to restart here because, again, it's using, it's running through Gatsby Node to create those pages. So if we rerun them and recreate the pages, we will get the information we want, hopefully. Fingers crossed I did everything right. And there we go, 1 minute read. And we know that it's not always the same because New Beginnings shows up with a 5 minute read. So our plugin is working, which is awesome. Now, there's a few more things I have on my kind of critical path to show you, but they're more about deploying the site, which I'll show in a second. Does anyone have anything they want me to run through while we're here? Stuff that's different or kind of more in depth with the stuff that we've done? I'm looking at your comments. Also, hi, everyone. Yes, learning about Sharp plugins. Can you add an image? Yeah, we can add another image. Do you want us to add an image in the blog post or in this main page? Oh, SEO. So there's, for post main page as an example. Okay, cool. We can try and do those two things. I'm off script now, so let's hope this all works. So in terms of SEO, again, the blog starter includes a lot of nice stuff for you. So that's actually already here. It's taking your title and description for SEO. You can check out the README for that plugin. So let's look at the main page and see if I can get an image. Okay, so images in Gatsby are using Gatsby image. Does that come built in? No, it does not. All right, let's go. All right, so first thing we want to do is we are going to install Gatsby image. We need Transformer Sharp and Plugin Sharp, but we actually already have those things. This is also going to be a bit of a spoiler alert because we're talking about images, I think, in a few webinars, but ask and you shall receive. So this is going to take a second to install, but once it's installed, we know that we need to include it in our plugins. So I'm just going to put it in down here. Okay, cool. So now we have Gatsby image. In our index file, I'm going to have us import image from Gatsby image. This is a JSX tag that we can use that's going to be optimized for images. But before we can do that, we have to query for an image. So let's go back to our GraphQL Playground. Got to be running Gatsby develop in order to make use of this. And we're going to get rid of this query and do a different one. So there's all kinds of fun stuff that we get. Yeah, image is defined but never used because we haven't used it yet, but we're going to shortly. So we could look at all of our files. We can look at all of our image sharp. What happens if we do that? Edges, nodes, children, image sharp, fixed. Oh my goodness, so many things. I don't actually know if anything's going to come up. Yeah. So sizes, children, image sharp. Whoa, look at all these things we can click on. What's happening? Nothing. So that's a little bit scary thing about GraphQL. There's a lot of different things that you can click on to look at all of these things. Oh my goodness, so many things. All right, so let's say we're querying for the Gatsby image icon. We actually have an example of how we do this already because we're doing it in the bio component. It's just using a static query hook, but the query is much the same. So let's take this piece. It's looking for Gatsby icon PNG, child image sharp. It's giving it a fixed size. We'll change that to fluid and we'll move that. So let's bring all of that down into our index and add it to the query. Let's make it fluid. If you're not familiar, these are the different types of images you can work with. Gatsby image sharp fluid. Okay, so if I take this back out into the GraphQL Playground, do I get a result? If you want to test to make sure you're getting to the end of it, you can use source and it'll make sure that it's actually pulling the image, because what you're really doing with the ... Gatsby image sharp fluid is pulling a rendered version of the image, and that won't work in the GraphQL Playground. So we can look at source instead. Okay, so we know now that this is going to work. The absolute path is interesting because we just noticed that we did it in bio.js, which is technically in a different place than index.js is. What's interesting about this is the absolute path is not relative to where this index.js file is. It's actually relative to the file system that you're looking at. So it's relative to this assets folder. Okay, so we have avatar, file, all of these things. Okay, where do we want to put it? So this is our main page. Let's put it right after our bio. So we're going to use that image tag. And we're going to say fluid equals data dot. Hold on, let's see, what's our return object? Okay. Avatar.childImageSharp.fluid. Data.AvatarDotChildImageSharpFluid. I'm definitely missing something. What did I forget, everybody? Fluid.childImageSharp.fluid. Again, I can't remember once I scroll up. Haha. We're going to see if this works. I'm not sure. Yay, I broke things. See, I told you I was going to do that if I did this on the fly. Okay, so let's see what we broke. All of these things are using node.frontMatter. What does bio use when it does this? And can we steal it? Data.avatar. Yeah, I did too many things. So let's see if we go back here. My brain was not translating that correctly. So we have fluid, not fixed. I believe, there we go. We got an image. Woohoo! So you will notice that the bio rightfully has alt text of author. So there are different things you can use in that API. The one we should always make sure we include is alt text. So this is the Gatsby G icon. And what we're doing is we're including the query for our image in the GraphQL query at the bottom of our page in our page query. And then we're using that path avatar. This is an alias so that if we were querying multiple files, if we got rid of this, we would just use file as the key. So avatar.child.image_sharp.fluid. What I tried to do was go all the way in here earlier because live coding on the fly is super fun and you forget things you know in real life. And the data is something that's passed in automatically for us. This is the result of our GraphQL query. And so all of the stuff inside of it, which we can see here, all of the stuff inside of it is inside data. So does that answer how to do images? That help everybody? Yeah, I'm going to assume that helped everybody. So once we have this site, you probably want to see it live. I did this ahead of time for us. I used Gatsby Cloud to set it all up, and then I automatically integrated with Netlify. Gatsby Cloud is in beta right now, so you should, maybe check that out. And now we have my first coding blog, netlify.com. I could have changed the domain, but it's all nice and live. You could go and see this right now if you wanted to. I'll actually throw it in the chat. And as you'll notice, I did stuff a little bit differently. So this color contrast is not as good as the color contrast for links that we went with, the slightly darker one. And which one? Hold on. Yeah. And I used a slightly different name and things like that. But the general idea is still the same. We're using the same images and all of that. So the thing that I want to show you is that all of this information is in a GitHub repo, which for anyone who doesn't have it, I'm gonna put it here. Did I somehow stop sharing? Hold on. Oh, when did that happen? Okay, here we go. I'm sharing again.
Yep, here it comes. Yeah,
okay. Yes, you do see a Veronica Mars fan. That is a signed poster from the movie. I was a Kickstarter backer. Anyway, so if you go to this GitHub repository, you'll see that it's all these branches are listed out. So the branch to start from the blog starter, the branch to add a post, adding the code snippet, the image, styling, etc. It doesn't have a couple of the things we added at the end, but that's okay. Gives you instructions to run it locally. All of the resources that were in that slide deck at the very beginning, some other Gatsby learning resources. And you can look at all these different branches and check out what we worked on today. So yeah, I think that's most of what I was planning on covering. If you have other questions, feel free to show them in the chat. But in general, Ask Gatsby JS on Twitter is your best place to ask questions. If you have recommendations for new documentation you'd like to see, or webinars you'd like to see, or areas that you're confused by, we're here to help. it's our job. We love teaching people, and I hope all of you learned something here today. So thank you. Oh my goodness, I love the chat. And yes, this video I think will be on YouTube later. That is the goal. So
Yep, we'll be uploading the recording to YouTube, and it should live on Twitch for, the default 2 weeks as well. And we will have another stream coming up on February 20th. That'll be at 10 a.m. Eastern, which I think is 1 p.m. Pacific. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be posting information about that probably by early next week.
thanks, everybody. See you next time.
I'm going to close out Zoom.